The chandelier crystals caught the light like frozen tears above the private dining room. Mahogany walls absorbed every sound except the deliberate click of Camille Dubois's heels against Italian marble. She moved with the kind of grace that came from years of invisible labor, the art of being present yet unseen. Elias Thorne sat at the head of the table like a king who'd bought his throne. His navy suit was tailored to perfection, his smile sharp enough to cut. Behind him, four men in identical black suits stood with crossed arms, their faces carved from stone. They weren't just security. They were a statement. On the table, a leather briefcase, open. Inside, neat stacks of $100 bills. $1 million, arranged like a prop in his personal theater. "Do you speak French?" Elias asked, his voice silk wrapped around razors. Camille's expression didn't change. She lifted the silver dome with both hands, steady as a surgeon. "Sir." "I said," he leaned forward, his grin widening, "do you speak French? Because I'll make you a deal, sweetheart. Serve me this meal entirely in French, proper French, not that Google Translate garbage, and this," he gestured lazily at the money, "is yours. $1 million. All you have to do is prove you're more than just the help." The room held its breath. Camille met his eyes. And smiled. "Like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from, and what time it is right now. We love seeing our global family tuning in. What would you have done if this happened to you? Tell us in the comments." 3 years earlier, Camille Dubois had been someone else entirely. She'd walked the halls of the Sorbonne with textbooks under her arm and dreams stitched into every step. Linguistics major. Fluent in 5 languages. A thesis on cultural power dynamics that had professors calling her brilliant. Her father, Jean-Luc Dubois, had been a respected art dealer in Paris. Cultured, connected, comfortable. Then came the scandal. A forgery ring. Her father's name dragged through international headlines. Assets frozen. Reputation destroyed. He'd been innocent, a pawn in someone else's game, but innocence didn't matter when the media had already written the story. Within 6 months, Jean-Luc was dead. Heart attack, the doctors said. Camille knew better. Shame had killed him. She'd fled to New York with nothing but her mother's maiden name and a fierce determination to survive. The degrees meant nothing here. No one wanted to hire the daughter of a criminal. So she did what she had to do. She became invisible. La Maison Étoilée was Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, the kind of place where senators dined with oil barons and tech moguls negotiated billion-dollar deals over $30 oysters. Camille had worked her way from busser to server in 18 months. She was perfect at it. Poised. Professional. Fluent in the silent language of luxury service. But every night, as she poured wine worth more than her rent and smiled politely at men who looked through her like glass, she remembered who she used to be. She remembered her father's voice. "Camille, dignity is not given. It is claimed." Tonight, she would claim hers. The challenge hung in the air like poison. Elias Thorne's associates shifted slightly, their stone faces cracking with the faintest hint of amusement. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a scar through his eyebrow, smirked. They'd seen this game before. Their boss collecting humiliations like trophies. Camille set the silver dome down gently. Her hands remained steady, but something had shifted in her eyes. A door opening. Or perhaps closing. $1 million, Elias repeated, tapping the briefcase with one manicured finger. "All you have to do is prove you're educated enough to serve me properly. Unless, of course, you're just another pretty face who can barely speak English, let alone." "Je comprends parfaitement, Monsieur Thorne," Camille said, her voice cutting through his sentence like a blade through silk. The room froze. Her accent was flawless. Not the careful, studied French of American classrooms, but the fluid, aristocratic French of the 16th arrondissement. The kind of French that came from breeding, education, and a lifetime of culture. Elias's smile faltered for just a heartbeat before reconstructing itself. "Well, color me surprised. But one sentence doesn't win you $1 million, sweetheart. I want the full experience. Describe this meal to me, in French. Tell me about the wine pairing, the preparation, the history of each dish. Make me believe you're worth what I'm offering." He sat back, fingers steepled, eyes glittering with cruel anticipation. This was his favorite part. Watching them try. watching them fail. But Camille didn't move toward the wine. She didn't reach for the dish. Instead, she straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and did something Elias Thorne had never expected. She met his gaze with the cold, quiet fury of someone who had nothing left to lose. "Monsieur," she said softly, "permettez-moi de vous poser une question d'abord. Allow me to ask you a question first." Elias's eyebrow arched. No one interrupted him. No one redirected his games. The security team tensed, reading the shift in power dynamics like predators sensing a threat. "A question." Elias laughed, but it sounded hollow in the cavernous room. "You think you're in a position to ask me questions? I'm offering you more money than you'll see in 10 years of. Connaissez-vous l'origine du mot arrogance, Monsieur Thorne?" Camille continued, her voice never rising, never breaking. "Do you know the origin of the word arrogance?" The scarred guard's smirk vanished. "It comes from the Latin arrogare, to claim without justification. To assume a right one has not earned." She paused, letting each word land like a stone in still water. "Vous parlez français, monsieur?" "Do you speak French?" Elias's jaw tightened. "I don't need to speak French. I have people who—" "Exactement," Camille said. "Exactly. You have people. You buy skills you don't possess. Languages you'll never master. Respect you haven't earned. You sit here in a French restaurant, surrounded by French art, drinking French wine, and you dare to test whether I am worthy of your money." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. One of the guards shifted his weight. Another's hand moved instinctively toward his jacket before stopping. They weren't sure what was happening, but they recognized danger when they saw it. Elias leaned forward, his smile now a thin, dangerous line. "Careful, sweetheart. You're about to talk yourself out of a fortune." "Non, monsieur." Camille lifted the silver dome with both hands, her movements deliberate, theatrical. "I'm about to teach you something your money can't buy. This is poulet de Bresse aux morillas, chicken from Bresse with morel mushrooms. The chicken costs $400 per pound because the birds are raised under AOC regulations dating back to 1957. They roam freely, eat specific grains, and are slaughtered using techniques refined over centuries." She set the dome aside, revealing the perfectly plated dish beneath. "The morels are foraged from the forests of Franche-Comté. They cannot be cultivated. They cannot be manufactured. They must be earned from the earth through patience, knowledge, and respect." Her eyes locked onto his. "3 things you clearly know nothing about." Elias's face flushed red. "You little. Mais ce n'est pas tout, Monsieur Thorne." "But that's not all." Camille's smile was razor-thin now, and behind it was something ancient and unforgiving. "You want me to serve you? You want to test my worth? Then let me tell you what I see when I look at you." She stepped closer. "I see a man who inherited his wealth from a grandfather who made his fortune selling weapons to both sides of a war. I see someone who has never built anything, never created anything, never sacrificed anything. You play with money the way children play with toys, and you treat people like entertainment because you've never been told no." The room was suffocating now. "Maintenant," she whispered, leaning down until her face was level with his. "Permettez-vous dire quelque chose en français que vous ne comprendrez jamais. And now, allow me to tell you something in French you'll never understand. La vraie richesse ne se mesure pas en argent, monsieur. Elle se mesure en dignité. Et vous en avez aucune. True wealth isn't measured in money, sir. It's measured in dignity. And you have none." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Elias Thorne did something unexpected. He laughed. Not the cruel, performative laugh from before. This one was genuine, almost relieved. He sat back in his chair, shaking his head, and when he looked up at Camille, his expression had completely transformed. "Camille Dubois," he said quietly. "Daughter of Jean-Luc Dubois. The art dealer who died in disgrace 3 years ago." The blood drained from Camille's face. "Oh, did you think I didn't know?" Elias stood slowly, buttoning his jacket with deliberate precision. "Did you think this was random? That I just happened to pick this restaurant, this private room, this specific night when you would be serving me?" Camille's hands, steady for so long, began to tremble. Elias walked to the window, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline. Your father didn't forge those paintings, Camille. I did. Well, not personally. I hired the best forgers money could buy. I needed a fall guy, and Jean-Luc was perfect. Respectable. Trusted. The kind of man whose downfall would make headlines and distract from the real operation. He turned back to her, and his smile was no longer mocking. It was pitying. I've been watching you for 2 years. Watching you rebuild. Watching you survive. I wanted to see if you had your father's spine or if you'd broken like he did. He gestured to the briefcase. This wasn't about French. This was about seeing if you'd fight back or take the money and run. Congratulations. You passed. Camille's voice came out as barely a whisper. Vous avez Tuesday, mon père. You killed my father. Your father killed himself, Elias corrected coldly. I simply created the circumstances. There's a difference. He moved back toward the table, closing the briefcase with a decisive click. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of this room. You're going to forget this conversation ever happened. And if you're smart, you'll take the severance check the restaurant will give you tomorrow when they let you go. Let me go. Camille's voice was hollow. I own this restaurant, Camille. I own half the buildings on this block. Did you really think you were invisible? He leaned against the table, arms crossed. You've been serving me for months without knowing it. All those private rooms, all those special requests. I've been testing you, studying you, and now I'm done. One of the guards stepped forward, a clear signal. But Camille didn't move. Something was hardening in her chest, not breaking, but crystallizing. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Dignity is not given. It is claimed. She looked at the briefcase. At Elias. At the 4 men who had watched this entire performance with the detached interest of people who'd seen it 100 times before. Then she smiled. Not the polite, professional smile of a server. The knowing, dangerous smile of someone who had just realized she held all the cards. You made one mistake, Monsieur Thorne, she said softly. Elias's expression flickered. Oh. You assumed I came here alone. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small recording device. The red light blinked steadily in the candlelight. Every word. Every confession. Every detail about the forgery ring. Camille's voice was steady now, vibrating with quiet power. And it's not just recording. It's streaming. Live. To 3 separate secure servers and a very patient FBI agent who's been building a case against you for 18 months. The color drained from Elias's face. You wanted to test me? Camille set the device on the table between them. You wanted to see if I had my father's spine? Permettez-moi de vous montrer ce que j'ai hérité de lui. Let me show you what I inherited from him. I have his patience. His intelligence. And his absolute refusal to let guilty men walk free. Did you see that twist coming? Comment yes or no below. The recording device sat on the table like a live grenade. 4-3 heartbeats. No one moved. Then chaos erupted. The scarred guard lunged forward, hand shooting toward the device. Camille was faster. She grabbed it and hurled it across the room toward the door. It skittered across the marble, disappearing into the hallway beyond. Get it! Elias roared, his composure shattered completely. 2 guards bolted after it. The other 2 moved toward Camille, their faces no longer impassive but coldly efficient. She backed toward the window, her mind racing. The device was a decoy, cheap electronics from a spy shop, nothing actually recording. But they didn't know that. She just needed time for. The lights went out. Emergency backup lighting cast everything in blood-red shadows. Through the window, Camille could see the entire block had gone dark. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't part of any plan. She'd come here alone, armed with nothing but words and a $15 prop. Lock the doors, Elias commanded, his voice ice-cold now. She doesn't leave this room until I know exactly who she's talked to. A hand clamped onto Camille's shoulder. She twisted, but the guard was trained professional. He forced her down into a chair with mechanical efficiency. Another guard returned from the hallway, shaking his head. Device is dead, sir. Looks like a dummy. Elias's smile returned, but there was no humor in it now. Only calculation. Clever girl, he said softly, approaching her. Your father tried something similar once. A wire. A dramatic confrontation. He thought he could bring me down with evidence. He crouched before her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. Do you know what happened to that evidence, Camille? She said nothing. It disappeared. Just like every other person who's tried to touch me. Just like you're about to. He stood, brushing imaginary dust from his suit. The restaurant will find you tomorrow morning. Tragic accident. Gas leak. You died in your sleep in the staff quarters. These things happen in old buildings. Camille's breath came in short gasps. She'd been so certain. So prepared. But she'd underestimated him. Just like her father had. The guard's hand remained heavy on her shoulder, pinning her in place. Elias walked to the briefcase, opening it one last time. He pulled out a single $100 bill and let it flutter to the floor at her feet. For the excellent service, he said. And the entertainment. Through the window, Camille could see the city beyond. Millions of lights, millions of lives, and none of them would know what happened in this room. Her father's voice felt distant now, fading like a dream upon waking. Dignity is not given. It is claimed. But what was dignity worth if you were dead? Elias nodded to the scarred guard. Take her to the wine cellar. Make it look. The door exploded inward. Not figuratively. The solid mahogany door literally splintered off its hinges as federal agents in tactical gear flooded the room with weapons drawn and flashlights blazing. FBI. Hands where we can see them. The guard's hand released Camille's shoulder as if she'd become electrically charged. Elias Thorne froze, his expression cycling through disbelief, rage, and finally landing on something close to fear. This is a private dining room. You have no jurisdiction to. Elias Thorne, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, art forgery, and conspiracy to commit murder. A woman in a Navy FBI windbreaker stepped through the shattered doorway, her badge catching the red emergency lighting. Special Agent Diana Chun. She was 50, steel-gray hair pulled back tight, and her eyes held the weight of 100 closed cases. Behind her, agents moved with practiced precision, securing each guard with swift efficiency. Camille remained seated, her body trembling with adrenaline she could no longer contain. Agent Chun approached her, offering a hand. Ms. Dubois. Are you hurt? Camille's voice failed her. She looked at the agent's hand, steady, certain, real. How did you? You did exactly what we needed, Chun said softly, helping Camille to her feet. When you applied for this job 2 years ago, you flagged our system. Jean-Luc Dubois's daughter, working at a restaurant owned by Thorne Industries? We've had an agent in the kitchen staff ever since, waiting. Camille's mind reeled. But I didn't contact anyone. I didn't plan. Tonight? That was all you. Chen's expression softened almost imperceptibly. We were monitoring the room remotely, audio only. We've been building the case brick by brick, but we needed him to confess. To say it out loud where we could record it legally. You gave us that. She gestured to a tiny device hidden in the ornate chandelier above the table. Real recording equipment. Federal grade. You were never alone, Camille. We've been listening to every word. Tears burned in Camille's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. Elias was being cuffed now, his 4 guards already pressed against the wall in restraints. But he was staring at Camille with something that looked almost like respect. Your father would be proud, he said quietly. He had the same fire. Same stubborn refusal to let go. Don't. Camille's voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare speak about my father. She crossed to where he stood, flanked by federal agents, his $1 million suit now wrinkled and disheveled. She was close enough to see the fine lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his hair, all the markers of a man who'd lived well on other people's suffering. You told me dignity is claimed, Camille said, her voice finding its strength again. You were wrong. Dignity is remembered. It's the sum of every choice we make when no one's watching. My father had it until his last breath. And you. She picked up the $100 bill he dropped, holding it between 2 fingers like something contaminated. You never had it at all. She let the bill flutter back to the floor. Agent Chun touched her shoulder gently. We'll need your full statement. And there's going to be media attention. This case involves dozens of victims, millions in stolen art. Are you prepared for that? Camille looked around the opulent room, the mahogany panels, the crystal chandeliers, the velvet curtains. For 2 years, she'd moved through spaces like this as a ghost. Invisible. Voiceless. Safe in her anonymity. Her father's voice returned, clearer now than it had been in years. Camille, dignity is not given. It is claimed. She understood now. He hadn't been talking about pride or reputation. He'd been talking about truth. About standing in the light, even when it burned. Yes, Camille said, her spine straightening. I'm ready. The federal building's interrogation room was nothing like the opulent dining room. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Gray walls absorbed sound. A metal table separated truth from consequence. Camille sat across from Agent Chun, a recorder between them, and told her story from beginning to end. Every detail. Every moment. 3 hours of testimony that would dismantle an empire built on lies. But it was what happened afterward that changed everything. There's someone who wants to see you, Chun said, leading Camille down a stark corridor. You don't have to agree. But I think you need this. She opened a door to a smaller room. Inside, behind reinforced glass, sat Elias Thorne. No longer the smug billionaire in the tailored suit. Just a man in prison orange, hands cuffed to the table, surrounded by his lawyers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. 5 minutes, Chun said. That's all he's allowed. Camille stood at the door, her hand on the frame. Every instinct screamed to walk away. To let him rot in the silence he deserved. But something pulled her forward, not forgiveness, but completion. She sat down across from him. For a long moment, neither spoke. The lawyers whispered urgently to Elias, warning him, coaching him, but he waved them silent. I'm going away for a long time, he said finally. His voice was different now, smaller, stripped of its performance. 25 years minimum. Maybe life. Good, Camille said simply. I want you to know something. Elias leaned forward as much as the restraints allowed. Your father. The night before he died, he came to see me. To my office. Alone. Camille's breath caught. He had evidence. Real evidence. Enough to bury me. But he offered me a deal. Elias's eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. He said he'd destroy it all if I publicly cleared his name and left his family alone. He didn't care about justice or revenge. He just wanted to protect you. Tears finally spilled down Camille's cheeks. I laughed at him, Elias continued, his voice breaking. I told him no one would believe him. That he was finished. I watched him leave my office, and I didn't think about him again until I read about his death in the paper. He paused, swallowing hard. I killed him, Camille. Maybe not with my hands, but I killed him as surely as if I'd put a gun to his head. Why are you telling me this? Camille's voice was barely a whisper. Because I need you to know that what you did tonight, standing up, fighting back, refusing to be invisible, that's what he tried to do. And he would be so goddamn proud of you. Elias's voice cracked completely. I've destroyed a lot of lives. Ruined families. Broken good people for sport. But what I did to your father, that's the one thing I'd take back if I could. Camille stood slowly. The lawyers shifted nervously, unsure if this was helping or damning their client further. You can't take it back, she said, her voice steady despite the tears. You can't undo what you've done. My father is gone. Those 3 years I spent rebuilding my life, hiding who I was, afraid of my own shadow, you stole that from me. She placed both palms flat on the table, leaning forward. But here's what you need to understand, Monsieur Thorne. You didn't break me. You didn't break my father. We are not defined by what you took from us. We're defined by what you couldn't touch, our integrity, our courage, our refusal to become people like you. She straightened, wiping her eyes. My father made a choice to protect me instead of destroying you. I'm making a different choice. I'm going to testify at your trial. I'm going to help Agent Chun find every victim, recover every stolen piece of art, expose every corrupt deal. And when you're sitting in a cell for the rest of your life, I want you to remember this moment. Camille moved toward the door, then stopped, looking back one last time. Au revoir, Monsieur Thorne. Que votre conscience soit votre seule compagnie. Goodbye, Mr. Thorne. May your conscience be your only company. She walked out without looking back. Behind her, through the soundproof glass, she heard nothing. But she felt lighter with every step. 6 months later, Camille stood in front of a different kind of audience. The courtroom gallery was packed with journalists, victims, and curious onlookers who'd followed the trial that dominated headlines for weeks. Elias Thorne sat at the defendant's table, diminished, silent, as the judge read the verdict that would seal his fate. Guilty on all counts. The gavel struck like thunder. Camille felt hands squeeze hers, Agent Chun on one side, and on the other Marie Laurent, one of the dozen art dealers whose lives had been destroyed by Thorne's schemes. They'd found each other during the investigation, connected by shared trauma and the slow, painful work of healing. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted questions. But Camille had learned something over these past months. She could choose which voices to amplify and which to let fade into noise. She stepped to the microphone stand, her cream blouse and navy blazer simple but elegant, professional without performing servitude. My name is Camille Dubois, she said, her voice clear and steady. 6 months ago, I was a server at an exclusive restaurant, invisible to the powerful people I served. Today, I stand before you as the daughter of Jean-Luc Dubois, a good man whose name was stolen along with his life. The crowd quieted. This case was never about revenge. It was about truth. About ensuring that the dozens of families destroyed by Elias Thorne's greed finally receive justice. About proving that wealth and power cannot buy immunity from consequences. She paused, looking directly into the cameras. To anyone watching who feels invisible, who's been told they don't matter, who's surviving in the shadows while carrying the weight of injustice, I see you. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And when you're ready to speak, there will be people listening. The questions erupted, but Agent Chun stepped forward, signaling the end of the statement. 3 weeks later, Camille unlocked the door to a small office in Brooklyn. The sign outside read, Dubois and Associates, Art Recovery and Advocacy. Sunlight streamed through tall windows onto refinished floors. Her father's old desk, recovered from storage after years, sat in the corner. On it, a framed photograph, Jean-Luc Dubois smiling at the camera, young and hopeful, with 5-year-old Camille on his shoulders. "Jelai fate, Papa," she whispered. "I did it, Dad." Her phone buzzed. A text from Marie, first client meeting at 2 p.m. She's nervous but ready. See you soon. Camille smiled. The work was just beginning. Helping victims recover stolen art, navigate legal systems, rebuild what had been taken. It wouldn't be easy. But nothing worth doing ever was. She made coffee in the small kitchen, the familiar ritual grounding her. Through the window, she could see Brooklyn spreading out below, messy, vibrant, real. No crystal chandeliers. No mahogany panels. No need to be invisible. The bell above the door chimed. Her first visitor wasn't a client, it was Agent Chun, holding a cardboard box. "Thought you might want this," Chun said, setting it on the desk. "Evidence we no longer need. Personal effects recovered from your father's seized storage unit." Camille's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, her father's favorite pen, his leather journal, and a sealed envelope with her name written in his careful script. She opened it with shaking fingers. "My dearest Camille, if you're reading this, I am gone, and I hope you have found peace. I need you to know that every choice I made, including the ones that led to my downfall, I made to protect you. Not because you needed protecting, but because I loved you too much to watch you suffer for my mistakes. You are stronger than I ever was. Braver. More brilliant. Do not let my story define yours. Do not let anyone make you invisible. Remember, dignity is not given. It is claimed. And you, my love, were born to claim it. Always, Papa." Tears fell freely now, landing on the paper like rain. Agent Chun touched her shoulder gently. "He'd be proud, you know, of everything you've become." "I know," Camille whispered. "I finally know." If this story touched you, like and subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Drop a comment if you believe that true wealth is measured in dignity, not dollars. And if you've ever felt invisible but found your voice, share your story below. You never know who needs to hear it.